Man, honestly, I don't know whether you're ever gonna find the guy. I lived with him for 3.5, 4 years, and I never saw him not once.
You never saw
I
him?
mean, I lived with him. Yeah, I lived with him, but I didn't see him. He paid rent. I heard his messages. So he was a real person. I mean, I think. I don't know. He had a room with stuff,
Right.
but, you know, he to say he kept to himself is an understatement because I never saw the man. He was like a real life ghost.
So for the past 6 months, I've been looking for someone. I've looked online, I've made calls, I've hit brick walls, I've fallen down rabbit holes that I'd rather not have. And I've heard some incredible stories from some incredible characters. The individual I'm looking for is named Jethro Spivey. And if that name rings a bell, you're probably familiar with some of his published plays and poems from the 80s and 90s. He retired, vanished, slipped into legend or oblivion, depending on who you ask, in the early aughts, and hasn't been heard from since. Well, not officially. We'll get into that later. Now, you would think Jethro Spivey would be an easy person to find. After all, he's a published playwright and poet. The publishers mailed checks to someone, and they were cashed by someone. But the more I investigated Jethro Spivey, the more I realized that he may not have been an actual person. At the very least, a pen name or pseudonym. At the very most, a fog, a phantom. Possibly even a collection of individuals that passed the mantle on to one another, much like the dread pirate Roberts in the movie The Princess Bride. In short, the man is an enigma. Now, I have a personal stake in this story, which we'll get to later, but suffice to say, I thought I'd be able to locate this man. Turns out, it was not easy, and what I did find was a little bizarre. I'm Scott Gordon, and this is Bullshit Artists.
Hello and goodbye. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want you to leave a message for me. And I don't need your bullshit. So fuck off. And may all your babies drown in a lake of fire.
Wow. Wow. And that's actually him.
That is him. That is him. Yes.
That's the voice of Ed Tinker, Spivey's former landlord when he lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. When was this recorded?
Oh, I don't know. Not many people had answering machines. It's probably like 85, 86, I think. It was when there were still them big ass cassettes. Yeah, nothing digital.
And how did you get a hold of this?
I was sweeping up his place after he left out, and he had some weird shit in there, like books and stuff like that.
And so this is the message that greeted people who,
Yes.
well, greeted, maybe a strong word. This is the message that greeted people who called his phone.
Yes. Everyone they called got this same message.
Wow. Now, did you know him?
No, I didn't know. I never met him, but I knew he was in apartment, whatever the fuck it was. I can't remember the number. 1. I'm not good with numbers.
Never saw him.
No, I never saw him. Never once laid eyes on the fuck, and that was strange, because you'd see people coming and going usually.
Did you ever talk with him?
I did. I talked to him on the phone a few times.
What did his real voice sound like?
Like a regular guy. He wasn't dumb. But he didn't want to talk, obviously. He did not want to talk to people. He didn't like He called them fuckers. Yeah.
What kind of person was he?
Ah, well, he was an asshole. I mean, Jesus Christ, listen to the message. He didn't like people. They didn't like him. And I didn't like him either, but you know, I was pretty drunk back then.
So just who is or was Jethro Spivey? Why do we care? Well, that question's probably best answered by someone who knows a little more about him than I do. This is University of Alabama professor Nathaniel Jordan, who wrote the 1999 biography on Spivey, High Concepts, Low Returns.
I would describe him as no less than the most underrated American playwright of the entire 80s. I don't see anyone that even comes close to his output or social commentary. He was really encapsulated the American male, the psyche of the American male, deconstructed it, if you will. He wrote a play in 1982 called Humping Your Leg, a love story. And it's about a young man coming of age, discovering his sexuality. He identifies as bisexual, but he also believes he is a reincarnated pit bull. So he spends a lot of the play grabbing the testicles of dogs, inspecting the genitalia of dogs, particularly pit bulls. And it's on its surface, it sounds vulgar. It sounds disgusting. And in many ways, it was perceived as such. It was banned in 13 states. But at the same time, Spivey is looking into what it means to be a man in America, and he's taking it apart piece by piece.
What it means to be a man in America, or specifically, from Jethro Spivey's point of view, what it means to be a gay man in 80s America. Between the years 1979 and 2003, he wrote no less than 23 plays on the subject. And I want to read you some of these titles in chronological order because they're fascinating, some of which you know, some of which you've probably never heard of, but all of which are fascinating and worth a look. In 1979, his first published play, I Fart, Therefore I Am, was put out to little fanfare. But then he released a play a year. He wrote a play a year for the entire decade of the 80s, some years more than one, beginning with Skinny Kid Blues in 1980, This Dick is My Dick, This Dick is Your Dick, Humping Your Leg, A Love Story, Face Without a Mouth, Am I Normal? Say Yes and I'll Kill You, The Dogs of Whores, Ejaculation of the Gods, Big Boy from Baton Rouge, Soul Tourniquet, and then in 1988, his most controversial play, Fecal Matters, Admiral Pansy, Pinch Me, You're Dreaming, and in 1990, he put out his famous Ass trilogy, Sphincter Fiction, Bunghole Johnson Jr., and I Know Why the Caged Ass Shits. Then he took 4 years off. No one's really sure what happened to him during this period. We'll talk more about that later. But in 1995, he came back with Worse for Wear, Nowhere Fast, Nard City, Flaccid Old Men, and then in 2001, The Nudist Colony Diaries, and his final play, the universally panned Ape Fart in 2003. And then, almost as suddenly as he'd come on the scene, Jethro Spivey vanished.
My name is Stanley Roth. I am the owner and publisher of Junior Mint Press in New York, and we were the exclusive publishers of all of Jethro Spivey's work from 1979 to 1988. Sorry about the audio, but there is a delivery truck outside my fucking office that will not leave, so we'll just have to deal with it today. Sorry.
It should be noted that Stanley Roth is kind of a character and uses some, shall we say, colorful language. Stanley looks exactly as you think he would look. He's short, stocky, oily, wears white shirt sleeves most days with pit stains, and actually has a crumpled red tie loosened up just enough for the hair of his chest to spill over it. Now in his early 70s, Stanley is a relic of an older publishing age. He actually has a cigar stubbed out in the ashtray on his desk.
I met Jethro Spivey in 1979. He came into my office with a manuscript for I Fought, Therefore I Am.
You actually met him?
Yes.
He's real?
Oh, he's real. Yeah.
What does he look like?
Well, at the time, he couldn't have been more than 20 years old. He reminded me of a cross between Sal Mineo, the actor, and a twig. Yeah, he looked like a stick bug. And I believe me, I wanted to step on that motherfucker more than a few times.
Really?
Yeah. No, he was an a-hole. Class A-hole. And I've dealt with some a-holes. He just didn't like people. He called them fuckers. And, I called him a few things on more than one occasion. But he came in with this play, and we thought it was a hoot. Well, my editors did. I didn't read that shit. I don't mess with the fags, but they loved it. They thought it was a hoot. And sure enough, all the homos in New York start putting on his little one-act plays. Every time we put them out, they sell out. They loved it. He would just fly off the shelves, and they didn't cost much to produce. So we were making a lot of money, and I guess, he liked the low maintenance, because after a few years, he didn't come into the office. We would just edit it back and forth. This is before email, right? So it would be, a few back and forths in the mail, and we'd be done. And most of his stuff was pretty clean. I mean, no, not material-wise. It was fucking filthy. But, editorially, it was pretty solid. It didn't take too many edits to get it right. He was a smart guy, he knew which end was up. But, oh my God, yeah, I didn't want to be in the room with him either, so fuck that guy, yeah. 79, we started with I Fought, Therefore I Am. And the last one we published was 88. Yeah, Fecal Matters. Yeah, we had to end it with Jethro after that.
I take it you didn't like that one?
No one liked it. And it was just disgusting. Oh, we got in some hot water with the New York Board of Naughty Words, and also the PMRC came after us, and it just wasn't worth it. We had lawsuits. I couldn't afford to pay the lawyers for the amount. By this point, his plays weren't selling that much, and we just decided to end it with Jethro. But I think afterwards he left us and went to Black Box Press in Pennsylvania, if I recall, and was there for a few years before they let him go too. He was trouble. He was just unlikable. There's only so much you can take.
Unlikable. A real a-hole. This sort of thing seems to be the consensus from people who knew or claimed to have known Spivey during this era. Another thing Roth got right, the play Fecal Matters is a real stinker. No pun intended, it doesn't read well, even by today's standards. It's pretty raunchy. Here's a section from one of the more offensive scenes in the play. Adrian, the main character, says, "Are you even hearing what I'm saying? Get the fecal matter out of your ears, fucko." And in this case, she is not using a colorful metaphor to describe someone. The character's name is literally Jimmy Fucko. And Jimmy replies, "Only if you lick it out. I said lick it out, bitch. Lick out the shit so I can hear you. Because your words and sentences and paragraphs are important to me. That's right. Ooh, what a tongue you've got. Does that ear poo taste good, honey?" So, you can see where this is headed. Straight down the toilet. Now, to make matters worse, Spivey suggested, in no uncertain terms, in the stage direction notes of the play, that actors insert actual feces into their ears while performing this scene. Now, while most scoffed at this, some actually performed the scene with shit in their ears, and it resulted in everything from cases of diarrhea and hepatitis to a reported case of typhoid in one upstate production. Eventually, the New York Actors Guild had to ban the play altogether, citing it as, and I quote, vulgar, devoid of all artistic merit, and actually a hazard to your health. Now, I can't think of any other play in the history of American theater that has touched all of those bases. On the next episode of Bullshit Artists.
You know, I'm not sure Mom loved either one of us growing up. I can't think of anything that she did love. Except maybe that show Cheers. Woody was a hoot.
He chased me up the street with a butcher knife, yelling, "Pumpkins are delicious." Fuck if I know what he meant by it.